Hi everybody, my name's Megan Creswell. I'm a senior consultant in the housing sustainability team at Tenner & Townsend. We're delivering this masterclass through the new support service that is called RISE, obviously fully funded by the Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero. We're here to help you develop your retrofit projects to apply for the government funding that is coming through imminently. I've worked at Tenner & Townsend for 2 years, so I've worked through previous waves of SHDF. So some of you I might have seen and worked with before. Previously, I worked for a housing association in East Anglia, where I kind of managed the SHDF projects, and with that, the energy efficiency projects and the contractors and supply chains that come with that. So agenda today, we'll be looking at the aim of today's session is to support prospective applicants for the Wave 3 of the SHDF who want to understand how to create successful supply chains. Obviously, it's a super important aspect of your SHDF project, and it has a big impact on how successful delivery of your project will be. So this is the agenda. We'll be going through quite a few different themes. So just firstly, a quick look at how we have to deal with each home in your project and how they are slightly different, and therefore the supply chain has to react to that. The compliance aspect, and again, what the supply chain and you need to do to fulfill the requirements of the scheme. Building a team, and this we go into some detail about how you could look at doing this, the different opportunities there are for building up the skills in the supply chain, but also internally as well. And then a little bit at the end about just the general scale of the needs and the skills for retrofit that we need across the country. So every home is unique. So essentially, as you all know, as hopefully a lot of you have already delivered retrofit previously, homes can look the same, and they can kind of be the same on a street and look and have similar characteristics, but they all need to be treated individually, particularly where you've got different residents and tenants using those properties. Particularly with EPCs, obviously RDSAP makes quite a few assumptions about information in the property, so therefore they can be the same, but it might not be actually reflective of what the property looks like. So therefore, we need to treat them all individually. So the idea is you want to look to bring together a supply chain that can deal with retrofit at scale and at speed, but also to understand the differences in properties and their requirements. Approaching the challenge from a mass customization perspective. So we need to understand technically what's required. We also need the processes that allow us to arrive at a technical design, put a supply chain in place, deliver the project successfully, and be signed off by several people. All of this together has to be done relatively quickly, and obviously in the timeframes that the funding programs and your installers will be planning to stick to. Therefore, obviously, it's important. Communication is super important in supply chain management and contractor management, and everybody, obviously from the start of the project or even before in mobilisation, should be clear about their roles and responsibilities, supported through clear communication strategies. So the next bit is around compliance, and obviously specifically for the SHDF schemes, but most retrofit projects are obviously now delivering to this same compliance standard. So essentially all works that get done on existing buildings, whether it's an energy retrofit or an extension, supply chain must be capable of working to UK building regulations, planning regulations, and making sure that the supply chain is working in a safe way. So not only to protect its own staff, but those obviously living and operating around the building. On the regulatory side, there are mechanisms to allow the design and the installation to be checked by local authorities or a private provider of building control. But also there are another mechanism that allows a contractor, if it works within a competence person scheme, which most of them will be doing now, to sign off their own work, and the scheme will check a percentage of that work for compliance. So Obviously, alongside planning regulations, that's where you were building your you would bring in building control and your local authorities kind of rules and regulations around that. These are all things to think about very early on in your project design, and make sure all of these kind of checks are done with your contractors early on. Health and safety is obviously a big part of managing any housing project where you're doing major refurbishment or retrofit. Hopefully most of you are aware of the CDM requirements. So, and I'm sure many of you have been kind of client role on that side before. So hopefully you're aware of kind of the client requirements for that. A lot of it obviously sits with the contract and the subcontractors in terms of producing a lot of the documentation. But one thing I think on the delivery side, which we've seen with previous ways of SHDF, is to make sure that kind of the requirements of the CDM are in place. So things like your welfare site is up and running for day one of installation date. Your surveys that you need to carry out, like asbestos or ground surveys, if you're doing more in-depth work, are carried out ideally before you even want to kind of kick off and start designing. So because they can cause delays obviously further down the line. It obviously also surveys will also support in what other supply chain and contractors you might need in your project as well. And obviously linking it back to planning applications as well, making sure those checks are done very early on to ensure no delays are seen during the project delivery. So this slide is now a bit more about the specifics for SHDF. I'm sure everyone by now is fully up to speed with PAS 2030, 2019 and 2035. So there's two slightly different kind of aspects. PAS 2030, 2019 is kind of the quality system for the installers, and all installers working through SHDF, and I'm sure other retrofit schemes like ECO, have to obviously comply with that standard. That it just basically is a compliance that, again, there'll be regular checks undertaken when they've got this quality system embedded. And then you've got obviously kind of the PAS 2035, 2019, which is the whole framework for the aim to de-risk and to de-risk the retrofit process, but also to provide support to everyone in the system, so your residents, but also you as well, so you know that everything has been done in a compliant way. So PAS 2035 sets up some additional technical standards that go over and above the UK building regs, which I spoke about previously, particularly in things like Part F, where it asks the retrofit coordinator and designer, and therefore the contractor, to aim towards a ventilation performance required for new build properties. So I'm sure, again, that's something you've all had to get to grips with on current SHDF projects. It can obviously slow things down again, so making sure residents are kind of understanding of what's required in order for works to carry out, and just that kind of standard that comes under doing work through PAS 2035, and all the additional requirements to make sure the retrofit is done to a really high standard. So it's all really good stuff. It's just things can take longer, and it's just making sure you're fully aware of all the processes that are required for it, to ensure a successful project delivery, and to also prevent any kind of compliance issues further down the line. Oh yeah, sorry, just a note on there to say that whilst it's good to have at the moment, the new standard of PAS 2030, 2035 will be mandatory from 30th of March 2025. So for any Wave 3 projects, the new standard will be required. So obviously a big aspect of creating a successful supply chain is building up your team. Obviously, you will need a relatively large team, which is something the RISE team can help you through in terms of our one-to-one support that we're offering. We can look at kind of skills matrix and working out if you've got any gaps in your current teams to deliver your SHDF projects. So in terms, I think I mentioned it earlier, in terms of kind of how you would organise your team, obviously you want to kind of build it up first, but the main thing is really good communication. You want to involve your supply chain really early on in the process, including designers ideally. So you'd have your potentially your retrofit designs ready and then hand over to your contractors where you can bring them in. Explain what kind of the milestones are when things have to be achieved, be really clear on those, your lines of communications, identifying those up front, and making really clear the roles and responsibilities. In terms of how you do this, obviously bring them in as early as possible, but a kickoff meeting is a really good point to bring everyone together and to iron out all those, the scope of the project and those things I've just mentioned. A detailed understanding of all the key stages and who is involved in which pieces of work is critical for avoiding costly delays and confusion later in the project. There will be some elements of a job which mean that the team will have to react to issues as and when they arise. So again, that line of communication will be really important about how things get back to the people that are needed, particularly when you've got residents in the property, struggling or whatever the issue might be, that things are dealt with really quickly. And it's really important to build in flexibility into your contract. Again, people have probably seen this where they've delivered previous projects, that homes can be completely, particularly when using desktop data, the homes can be completely kind of unexpected to what you had down in your desktop data. So therefore, the scope would change significantly in some instances. You might not find until you're kind of pulling up flooring or trying to dig down to the damp proof course that you've started to find real issues with rot or damp. So that's where you've got to be really flexible, and your supply chain has obviously you've got to build that into your contract terms to allow any flexibility. Contingency is obviously a major thing that DESNAs have brought up previously in waves, and making sure that is included in your project budget. So supervision. So I guess with PAS, there could be a potential reliance on the retrofit coordinator to do a lot of that. So if the retrofit coordinator is external, then it's good to kind of keep that supervision internally and have those skills available so you understand the process fully, particularly with PAS and where you can train up internal people. It's really beneficial to have that oversight and understanding. There's obviously lots of contractors that are building up their skills and capacity to deliver to these retrofit projects. So there's a lot that are becoming new to retrofit and still kind of are finding their feet with PAS and all the requirements as well. So that's obviously something to just keep a close eye on, and also to help support the contractors through that learning process as well. One thing again we've seen is that there might be an issue with kind of supplier capacity. So again, early and upfront, you want to really make sure that they have the supply chain and the numbers of skilled workforce available to complete the works you need in the timescales. And if you're looking for regional supply chain as well, to make sure that it will be easy, to get out to properties quickly and stuff. Just thinking about those kind of things. So just following on building a team. So with attitude, it's important to work with contractors who are open-minded. You'll have these good relationships, I'm sure, with previous contractors, and who are willing to kind of learn and take feedback appropriately. Again, some of these are going to be new to the market. But as long as they're kind of willing and really keen to take it on and are doing a good job, then it's kind of good to see some of those potential issues you might come across. But as long as they've got ways of coming over it and are really kind of positive and keen, then it's kind of good to be flexible with them. Kind of long-term relationships. Again, some of you might have worked with your contractors for a long time now. If it kind of supports obviously that building of the supply chain, if they know that there's going to be an opportunity for long-term involvement and partnerships, then that helps them to kind of obviously build their team. It gives them the opportunity to train more people up, and it just encourages a general positive attitude towards you as a client as well, and your residents will benefit as well. So one thing to, I guess, think about at the procurement stage with that long-term involvement is to offer contracts with extensions, +2, +3 years if they are performing how you'd want them to be. So if that's possible, always look to kind of add those possible extensions on if you feel like it's a good relationship that you want to keep building on. It adds to the opportunities for the supply chain to keep going and expanding. So pricing, yeah, there's lots of change and kind of market inflation in the retrofit world. So things are changing all the time, prices changing, new products are coming out all the time. So obviously it's one thing to kind of just be flexible on maybe even the design as well, because new energy efficiency products coming through all the time, things being put through the SAP methodology and approved. So you do have to be quite flexible with that, with the pricing and obviously the design as well. Obviously, you need to stick to a pricing structure and a schedule of rates potentially, but ideally be flexible with that. And again, that's where you need to kind of include a contingency and work with your contract to kind of look at that as well. Prices don't stay the same every year. As we know, inflation is obviously still relatively high at the moment. There's always going to be a kind of inflationary cost to add on to the material costs. And then if anything happens in the world, that has a knock-on effect on things as well. So the scale of the need, this is just a bit of a summary of the needs. So large-scale retrofit requires skilled contractors. By 2035, it's estimated that an additional 260,000 roles in retrofit are required to meet the demand in the industry. So the government is obviously working on progressing skills in the supply chain, particular retrofit, and they've allocated 8.85 million to train up 8,000 people. And the Homes Decarbonisation Skills Training Competition offered 9,000 training courses, thanks to 9.2 million of government funding. A lot of local authorities and combined authorities are doing their own kind of skills programs, and some of the big players in the market have got their own funding schemes to get people into retrofit, and particularly past 2035. So do feel free to message our team if that's something that you might be interested in looking at. We might have some kind of database about where we can, where these training programs or kind of like free training is being offered in your area. Essentially, it's showing the growth in the market towards the end. There's a big peak now required. We're still well behind the numbers that we need to be able to deliver the kind of scale of retrofit works that we need. So yeah, more than 223,000 of our existing workforce need to be retrained in addition to those new roles above. So yeah, essentially the scale is massive, as you're all aware, and I'm sure people have had a lot of challenges with kind of the lack of available labour and workforces to deliver the relatively new installations around retrofit, although some of them have been going on for years, but there's things like heat pumps and solar PV and battery kind of only been seen on a mass scale in the last couple of years. So there's still quite a lot of skills gap with those areas in particular. It represents the number of additional FTE specialist skills required each year up to 2050. It illustrates the large-scale challenge of building up capacity in the specialist skill sector. And yeah, as I said, I think heat pump installers just need basically a lot more qualified installers to deal with the demand. So all of these kind of diagrams illustrate the enormous amount of skilled people we need in order for the UK to hit their net zero carbon targets in 2050. So I guess as organisations who own housing, I guess we have a requirement as well to support the supply chain, because they rely on longevity. I think in the past, when we saw a lot of these schemes kind of come in, but they were quite small scale, we saw a lot of the supply chain kind of going bust and going into liquidation because there just wasn't that longevity and that collaboration in place. So we have kind of a responsibility to support the supply chain to ensure that they then help us in the long term and they've got the best skills available. So creating future supply chains, as the role of a social landlord is really, again, to support the supply chain in building up that capacity. you have the power to influence the retrofit employment market based on kind of the numbers you're giving over to the supply chain. Just some ideas about kind of what you can look to do. So you want to be a positive catalyst for market spend, partner with colleges, large contracts and local authorities to build capacity, embed social value requirement, look at partnering with kind of local retrofit skills hubs. See the social value quota mentioned is really important. So if you can, it's looking at things like hiring staff, also working with supply chains that have a representative cohorts. So your workforce is particularly ethically representative of the local community. You could potentially stipulate in your contract of using a percentage of work from SMEs. So contracts stipulate a protection of SMEs via payment terms, conditions, roles and responsibilities. Social housing landlords have the power to embed social value into their projects and by way of this shape the retrofit skills market. We have seen quite a lot of examples from local authority case studies where contracts where 100,000 plus have a minimum of 10% social value within them, which offers lots of support to the local community and the organisation itself. It's important to keep open discussions with the market, prepare them for your needs. Then you can form strategic partnerships with some of the colleges, contractors, and local authorities. There's some really good examples out there. So the Greater Manchester Combined Authority provide training and retrofit skills for over 1,000 people to prepare the area for the upcoming skills requirement. And this kind of partnership and training for regional and local areas has been seen across the country as well. So yeah, embedding social value into your contracts is really important. I'm sure your procurement teams are fully supportive of this. So I guess just with social value, you just want to help protect the public funding. Obviously, that's coming through the government for public good, and it can be amended obviously to best fit the needs of your area, which is obviously a regional thing that the government are looking for. This kind of applies more explicitly to local authorities where you've got wider outreach, but housing associations can set quotas and discuss them with local authorities as well. So yeah, just in terms of widening your skills, both internally and externally, we've got some groups here that you can target to increase the uptake in skills. So I'm sure all of you are aware with your kind of internal apprenticeship teams working with some of these target groups. These target groups in particular will ensure that a wide range of people are attracted to the skills market. And again, most of you that attend today will have the power to influence this market and to make it as diverse as possible. So yeah, I won't go into a lot of detail because it's there and you'll have the slides available, but school leavers, NEETs, which are those not in employment or education, existing trades, obviously people looking to adapt their skills, particularly where you've got people like gas engineers who might be looking to retrain to things like air source heat pumps, what the requirements are for that. And those just looking for kind of a change of career. It's just making those opportunities available for those who have an interest in the area and want to, support the uptake and the move to a zero carbon future. So just a bit more on social value. So the ambition should be that local people to deliver more comfortable, warmer, affordable, healthy homes to their own communities whilst developing long-term viable careers. The two key barriers which need to be overcome are economic inequality and equal opportunities. To reach its end goal, the industry must work to overcome these barriers. So the key actions seen, no, that's right, are seen on here. So yeah, contract out work locally. I think that real local presence obviously helps you with these social value targets, but it helps with projects as well because people don't have so far. If there's any issues to travel, they might be quicker to respond to residents' needs as well. Investing funding into local workforce and upskilling, reskilling those who are currently in your workforce, making sure you have an inclusion of underrepresented groups, Mix of genders, so having a condition to have a percentage of FTE women and non-binary employees. And yeah, also inclusivity, so prioritizing people with disabilities for accessible roles, and how you can support them to deliver the role, and promoting ethnic diversity as well. So obviously social value is massive, and again I should imagine it's something that is included on most of your contracts, but if you've got any questions again around it, it will obviously be seen through SHDF Wave 3 again, and your support manager will be there to help you if you've got any questions on it. So that's the end of the presentation. Kind of a whistle-stop tour. We did lots of different sections. Obviously supply chain is massive. So hopefully some of that was useful.